Good morning, everybody, and happy Monday. So, we're going to be working a little bit today over on the main line. I've already set up some rigging there for us and everything like that so that we can get started on some interesting concepts. But I did want to talk a little bit today, just starting out, with a few things that are kind of on my interest list, like pens and things like that. I've got this wonderful box right here, which is full of all of my various painting supplies and things like that. And I think that painting is one of those things where it's so complicated and difficult, and people have a hard time knowing what to paint or how to paint or whatever. And the truth of the matter is, especially with watercolors, for me, it's a matter of skill and not about the amount of money you spend. Which one of the reasons why I like watercolors. The other reason is it didn't get on my hands. I hate things on my hands. So, we're going to go ahead and head over to the table, and we're going to do our warm-ups for the day, and we're going to also do some painting. And while we're at it, plausibly dodge a cat who has decided to go very insane today. So George is all over the place and being somewhat of a pest. So I'm going to head over there and we'll see what happens next. So here we go. Okay, so this is a painting I was doing. Let me move this over here. Urga burga. Oh, and the most important thing needs to be moved, my coffee. Coffee needs to be moved over. All right. This piece right here is a piece I was working on a while back. And I've never finished it. I've never finished all the parts to it. Now, the truth of the matter is, usually we will take these down to the table so that they won't move, because you can see this one's moving all over the place. However, that requires blue masking tape, which I seem to not know where I put it. I have cleaned my office. My office is now, well, not totally clean, but we were in the process of moving everything over, and I have this beautiful rack just to the left of my camera here where I keep all my art supplies, including my blue masking tape. I don't have that blue masking tape in this rack. I noticed that this morning, and I'm not quite sure what to do about that. That's alright. We can work without it. But before we do this, of course, we need to do our warm-ups, as that's very important to everything. I'll grab us a piece of paper from over here, where the piece of paper is. And we'll get started on warm-ups. Now, the last couple of weeks, we've been doing warm-ups that were lines and circles, half circles. Now we're going to try to do some warm-ups that are a little different. This time, we're going to try to do boxes. The box is the key element of most art. So, when I talk about a box, you can draw a square. Everybody can, right? Everybody can draw a square. But what you want to do is to make a box. Right? To be able to make a box. And the reason we want to be able to do that is because that's the fundamental base unit for building any kind of artwork. So you can make long boxes, right? And short boxes. Right? And that's just a matter of practice here. And we just want to practice with all sorts of boxes. Hang on, guys. I think the cat is in the trash can. And that's what the squirt gun's for. Kitten in the trash can. He thinks that's awesome. Thinks the trash can is the best thing on the planet. All right. Now, all of these boxes are from the same perspective. So now I want to practice doing boxes that are at different perspectives, right? Right? Or even better, boxes that come at us. Right? And we're just practicing this. When you do practice boxes like this, don't use pencil, only use pen. Let the mistakes speak for themselves, and go on ahead and be okay with it. It's totally alright. There's nothing wrong with making mistakes. That's how we learn, right? We can't correct if we don't do the mistakes. There's nothing to correct, right? So go on ahead and just enjoy being, as I often feel, kind of like the bohemian art styles of back in the day, where the artists would just hang out and be artists. We have a job to do, but there's no reason not to enjoy our job, right? So we're just going to do this and do this, and we're just indicating where these boxes are. These are not done with perspective lines. I'm just eyeballing the perspective, which is dangerous, and I don't recommend it. But we'll do perspective later. So for right now, we'll just do boxes. Not glamorous at all, but not all of it is, right? There we go. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 17. This one distorts by the end. Look at that, it gets all warped and distorted at the end there. Kind of funny, actually. So, 19, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25. Now, you may be wondering where I'm getting all of this idea from. There is a guy out there who has drawbox.com. And he's the one who sort of spurred me into thinking this. The idea and the concept being that you should draw and practice and warm up and all of those things like everybody else, to improve your skills. So I'm adapting his techniques a little bit here so that we can kind of work on this and figure it all out. Um, so that's kind of what we're doing here, is just adapting a technique from drawbox.com. And of course, if you're wondering why I counted, it's because he wants you to do 250 of these. That's 10 times what I just did. Right? So we're going to keep making boxes for a while. We'll do lines, we'll do boxes, we'll keep them up. That's a good warm-up anyway. We've warmed up now. Now we've warmed up. We've done 25 boxes. So let's talk about painting a little bit here. I have a few things that I really enjoy using when painting. We've got a couple of things that are critical for painting, obviously. Don't go anywhere without your paper towels. We've got a couple of these very small cups, which I use for fresh water and for wastewater. You'll need two for painting. Of course, it's watercolor, so what good is watercolor without water? So this is just a bucket of water. This came from Japan, and so I like to keep it around because it says water. This is water in here. There's water in here. Put water in this. It's pretty much what it says. But I also use a special brush, and this brush has a reservoir in it. And it's hard to see because I filled it up, but you can kind of see the bubbles in here that have sort of hit here, and you can kind of see a little bit. It's kind of hard to see because of course we're all blurry, but what it has done is it's added water into this brush, right? So we've got a pre-loaded brush which is already loaded up and ready to go. Now of course you can just go down and get, and I do this all the time, I actually kind of like getting the Artist Loft blue ones because they're blue and they're clear, and I think that's neat. But, you know, here is just a big square brush. This is great for when you need to do a big, messy, big thing, right? So I carry some of these bigger brushes around. This is a slightly smaller but useful square brush, right? And none of these are expensive. These guys are a little bit more expensive. Here's my other brush, but this is for finer detail. You can see it's a smaller brush tip. And we're not doing that today. We're not doing finer detail. And if we do, when we do, I'm going to use smaller brushes just from my standard set here. Right, this is for really tiny stuff. This is what we call a 5 brush. Right, so we got a couple of these like little brushes and stuff like that for doing things like this. I've got a couple of sets of brushes over here, which is great. So, let's talk a little bit about my palette. I have with me, I always carry with me this palette. This is a tin that I bought off of Amazon, and I love this tin. And what I did was, the tin has, this is a mixing area, and it folds shut like this, right? And that's what you got. This is a Meaden watercolor tin. And what I did, and I learned this from one of the guys at the local Guyries. It was a nice folk. There were actually 2 of them. And one of them still works at this Guyries, I think, and then the other one now works in Boulder Guyries. But they were both really sweet and totally got me on the right path for watercolors. First of all, you go buy these with these ones that have these little removable buckets in here. Because these buckets can be pulled out and swapped, right? So they can be pulled out. So let's say after a while you decide you don't want this color, it's easy to just swap it out. And these are actually standardized. These little buckets are, so you can go get a ton of buckets, and they're like 75 cents a piece or something. I don't even think they're 75 cents a piece. I think it's like 25 cents a piece or something. I don't know. Doesn't really matter. They're awesome little buckets, and then you can just fill them with whatever color you want, and then swap them out as you get. For example, Pepper has been doing his own watercolors. He's been doing standardized or his own personalized watercolors. Since he's been building these watercolors, that'd be perfect. I could give him a handful of these little buckets, and he could put his watercolors into them when he makes them, and then I can snap them into here, and then they would just live, right? And then they would work. Now, here we've got up here is some of my dad gave me watercolors once. He was trying to get, he was trying to be, trying to really reach out and say, you're an artist, here, have this thing. And he gave me this really neat set that he bought at Texas Art Supply. And it had watercolors and gouache, and it had all kinds of great stuff in it. And it was a really neat set. Sadly, the whole set was very expensive, but the paints really weren't of top quality. And you can kind of see that because they crack here, and they've cracked a little bit, and they've broken, as opposed to these four, which are bought recently at Gyrie's, and they're very high quality paints. These four paints are my really high quality and expensive paints. But they, it doesn't really matter. Everything that I have done on this piece was done with these paints. So, I mean, even though we're talking about a certain amount of, like the gold that you can kind of see there that's shining, that's this gold paint right here. And, that's really expensive, but it still looks just as good as this blue, which is this blue right there. There's nothing, that's not any different. So, expensive just really means how difficult is it to handle, or how simple, or how easy is it to handle. Has nothing to do with the end product. If you're willing to put up with a little bit more of a pain in the butt, cheap paints work just as well. They make just as pretty a painting. So, don't worry about that. I don't. The only real reason I buy expensive paints from Gyrie's is because actually the guys at Gyrie's know what they're talking about, and they tell me all the cool stuff that I need to know. So, I'm good with that. Real quickly here, one of the other things that they told me to do at Gyrie's that I thought was so cool was this. This is literally these guys painted in little stripes up here. Because you can see, like, especially my phthalo, I love this blue. This is one of my favorite blues on the planet. This is like the perfect blue. This color is absolutely perfect. But if you look here, it just looks like some kind of dark navy blue, and you can't really tell, what it looks like. And so they painted everything on this card and then glued the card to the inside of the lid, and I thought that was just genius, right? But this tells me exactly what these colors are going to look like when laid down on the paper. And so, like this violet looks black. You can't tell that it's violet at all, and you wouldn't know unless you looked up there, right? So that's what I've got going on here. These are just, and I even write the names of the paints on here so that if I have to go replace this bucket for any reason, I can. So there you go. That's sort of a tour of my paint tin. And we're going to put the paint tin to the side over here so that it's not in the way, because we really don't want it to be in the way of the painting for you guys to be able to see, right? So if we're working on this piece right here, you want to be able to see it. Now, this piece is what we call a Daedalus class. It's a special class ship from Star Trek that actually has a lot of history, but I'm particularly fond of this class. So I'm going to take my water here, and I'm going to put some water in here. And this is, I put up here a bucket, and you can't see it, it's just off camera. It's one of these. So I'm going to fill this guy up with water too. And this will be my freshwater reservoir, and this will be my dirty water reservoir. And then we'll put my bucket of water over here. So here we go. The first thing we want to do when we do this is, first of all, I need to share some water here. Because this is a little overrunning here. First thing, make sure you have paper towels. Make sure you have all of your paints ready and 2 buckets of water. One's going to be fresh water, one's going to be dirty water. And you're always going to dip your brush into the dirty water first to clean the most of the paint off, and you only get fresh water when you're trying to mix new paints. So, you also make sure you make your water not look like your drink. The reason why I drink out of a coffee cup with a straw is because of the number of times I've tried to drink my paint water. So, this is an important distinction because, of course, I will drink that by accident. So I use now these little half cups so I won't do that to myself. Okay, looking at my piece here, what I've really got is I've got a planet right up here that needs to be done. That's like a moon or something. I know my light source is highlighting back here, and then it's getting reflected light off the planet here, and all of this is just lit up because it's, you know, a starship, and that's what starships do. So let's first grab one of my I've got these big brushes here, right? This one's a chisel brush, and it's a pretty big brush. But I actually think I want to go even better. Like, this is the same size. This one. This is the brush we're going to do the rings with. This planet has rings right along here. And what we really want to do is do a lot of this ring work. But first, we're going to do what they call wet on wet. Okay? I'm going to take a little bit of my water here on the brush. I'm just going to brush it into the page. What are you painting, guy? Absolutely nothing. This is why we tape these things down. Right? All we're doing is wetting the paper. That's what we're doing here. That's why I'm using this huge brush. It picks up a lot of water, and it will put it down pretty nicely. And this is a technique called wet on wet. And this is because what I really want out of this here is I don't want it to cross into any other line. I want it to just be right up here. And I want it to be in the ring. But I really don't want any of the paint to leave. Okay. We got the page good and wet. Right here. Okay. Now I feel like the rings should be some kind of unique color, like gold. Good morning, Donald. Oh, maybe I am. Maybe I can turn it up a little, like that. Turn the mic up. We had the mic up. Whoa, see there, it spiked. That's not what we wanted. We turned the mic up because we were working, or we turned the mic down because it was distorting last night during game night. So I turned... Okay. So what we got going on here is we're working wet on wet, which is a technique whereby we make the page wet first. Okay, so we're putting in the water first, and you can actually see that here. We've really wetted the just the rings. That's all we've done is just wetted the rings, right? So we're going to do the rings next. Next thing we're going to do here is I'm going to make these rings green. Why? Because that seems like a thing. So I'm going to take my big brush, which is already loaded with water. I'm going to put some water down right down here, right here. And we're putting water, well, let's put it right here so you can see it. Putting water down, and I'm going to take this kind of greenish color right here, and I'm going to put it in there, and more green, and put it right there, more green. And I'm going to push, and that'll give me a little bit of water down here, a droplet that I can use. Right? And the thing about the wet on wet technique is that the paint will just go into it, right? So we're just going to kind of come along here like this, right? We're going to follow out like this. And we very much want to give that appearance that the rings are moving, like moving out like this and heading out into this area where they'll come back around like so. Right? We're going to give this, there's a division in this ring here, right? So we're going to do that, kind of give a little bit of the division here in this ring, like a Cassini division, right? That's the division in the Saturn's rings. It's called the Cassini division. Those of you that are wondering. It's the large division created by one of Saturn's moons, which is called a shepherd moon. And the shepherd moon is called that because obviously it shepherds rocks, right? So we're going to give this division here now really, goodness knows why these rings are green. I don't know. They just look good with the blue. That's really what it boils down to with me. However, it does make you wonder what would cause the rings to be green. Are they methane ice? Is that what's going on out here? Does kind of make you wonder. There we go. So we're just putting in this green out here, and actually you can't see because I've just moved off the table there. There we go. Put this green in. We're just putting it along this upper line, and this is the dirty water, so we're going to mix in some more dirty water. And if we rub against the paint that was already here, this paint right here, you'll see that it starts to lift, which is important because this painting is probably already 8 months old, or maybe 9 months. So it has been a long time since I painted this blue in. And one of the things you'll notice is that I can unpaint my blue that's been sitting in here drying for a very long time. We're still going to mix in some of this green. Come around this corner here. Right. I'm just going to keep doing this here. Now the painting ends before the edge of the page, so I'm going to stop the rings before we get out there. We're just going to put in a couple of like greenish stripes to indicate you were right on the edge of these rings. Right? Just like this. Now the wet on wet technique means that it's all going to be kind of blurry and not really defined. That's just the nature of this particular technique, right? If we want to get sharper lines, we do wet on dry, where we don't prep the page, and that gives us a sharper line. Now, I am sitting here talking like I know what I'm talking about, and I want you to be aware that really Oi Bob is the one who taught me how to do a lot of this, and I may not be doing it right. He is sort of the local guru at this, but I'm going to give it my best shot. I'm going to also try not to stick my head in the way, because that doesn't help us any. I'm easily entertained. Okay, so we're just putting in these divisions in the rings to indicate that something is going on out here, right? There we go. Just like this. Alright, so we're going to do that. I'm going to give a little bit of water in here for this. We're going to continue to kind of bring this around like this. So what we're doing here is just bringing the rings around, right? This is, by the way, not one of my best paintings, but it's okay. You have to have bad paintings to have good paintings. And that's critical. People often kind of sit here and fret over finishing a bad painting, and the truth is all of these are always going to be practice so that you can come up with better paintings. There's always a use, even paintings that you're not happy with. Let's not paint in that Cassini division out there. So no matter what, you're always improving. And that's the important thing. It's always important. And we can't worry about yesterday. We have to only worry about today. So, here we go. We're going to put just a little bit of highlight up here at the top to indicate just sort of distance on this ring, and that works. I'm going to have to move over here to see what you're saying. Hey, Brent. And I totally understand that. My poor phone is already sort of bogged down and having issues. Okay, I feel like we are done with green at this point, and now I'm going to move into this blue because I need to put it through this Cassini division, right? So a lot of this is my phthalo blue that I love so much, watered way down, right? So we're going to do that. We're going to take some of that phthalo blue. Phthalo. I love my phthalo blue. We're going to water it way, 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 way down. It's a very deep color, phthalo blue is. So you have to be very careful with it. We're going to just kind of come in here. We're just going to use this and just come along like this. And you have to be very, very, very careful with it, because it will overrun things if you're not careful. There we go. Just enough to kind of define that inner area and stuff like that. I have to come over here to read what you guys are doing. Watercolor day. I hope you can hang on there, Donald. I hope you can hang with me. Stay with me, Donald. Don't die. Okay, so this is phthalo blue in here, but down here I've got kind of a purple going in too, so I've got to go in with my violet. I'm gonna have to go in with my violet here. All right, I put down some water, grab my violet, and come back around. We're just gonna tap in here, just a little bit, right? I'm gonna tap around here. There we go. A little bit of violet. And I'll actually kind of go back in here, right up against the hull of the ship, because I'm seeing that my phthalo blue didn't, or the violet that's through this part of the ship didn't quite make it up onto the hull right up here, and it's conspicuous. So I'm going to deconspicuousness this and do that, right? Now, since this is wet on dry, we're going to have a little bit more of these lines that come out like this, which is what I really want. So I'm actually going to come back in here and I'm going to do this. With the wet on dry technique, I'm dotting right through here. And what this will do is when this dries, it's going to have the effect that people think of when they think of watercolors. It's totally going to have that border effect, you know, kind of going along, where you kind of have that, it makes lines that kind of go through. And I don't know how to explain it. I'm kind of doing a bad job of it, I'm sorry. But what we're going to do here is we're just tapping in like this, right? And that's causing clouds effectively. And this is what wet on dry is good for. And I actually rather love wet on dry for this effect. One of the reasons why I go for using watercolors is for that effect. So, what we're going to do here, we're going to just give these clouds going in here. And he's got these purple clouds kind of going in, and since I'm doing this wet on dry, it's getting these nice edges. See these nice edges of clouds here, kind of going into the depths of this cloud. I don't know, it's a nebula, right? And I'm going to leave some of the blue in here, make it look very much like a cloud, right? Really move up against this ring right here, and for that matter move into this corner really good here, so that all of that's just one unit, right? Use my watercolor here. I am such a newbie at watercolors, but that's okay. We have to start somewhere. And so we'll make sure that this line doesn't exist right here. See this line? It's going to make it look artificial. We don't want that to look artificial. We're going to really get in there. We're going to work on that so that it doesn't get kind of into there. I gotta come back over here. Yes, I agree. Rings are always really cool. There's always something neat about rings. And so I mean, I don't blame you at all, Donald. I'm fascinated by them as well. Cannot blame you. Rings are the best. Went on ahead and I'm gonna really work in here. Right? I'm just trying to kind of build in here. And remember that this purple cloud is going to be below the ring too. So I want to make sure it's got some presence down here. You know, it's whatever is this cloud kind of going along back here, it's going to have presence below. So we're going to do that, make sure it's got sort of a dark. It's right here, and we'll poke and prod out here. Again, since we're doing wet on dry, we're going to get all of that really cool effect. Right? We're going to get this kind of bleed out effect, which is what watercolor is notorious for. Right? Well, it bleeds into the area out here, and we're going to use that to our advantage. It also gives a lot of variation in the way that the paint kind of goes out and does its thing and gets dark over here, and maybe we'll even put some of it out here, kind of highlight that there's a nebula out here, you know. Go in here with some water and push that out. There we go. There. Right? So, Star Trek lore kind of says that the Archon was a Daedalus class, but that's not actually, like, proven anywhere. But that's okay. I like to follow Star Trek lore as best as I possibly can, even if it is kind of ridiculous sometimes. You know, or if it's not canonized. We never saw the Archon, so we don't know. For those of you who are wondering who I'm talking about, the original series episode called Return of the Archons, which involved a Federation ship getting lost out at a planet, and of course Kirk and Spock and McCoy are, you know, sent to figure it out. Naturally. Okay, kind of went through and fixed the purple there on that. Now I kind of want to go back through and look. My rings look pretty decent. I mean, like I said, I'm not ecstatic about this particular picture necessarily. I was experimenting, and you can see here, with the idea of splattering on there to kind of make it, and all I really did was just make a mess. So a lot of watercolors has like splattered dots on it, and I thought, oh, that looks great, and then I did it and I'm like, ooh, that didn't look great. Okay, let's do our moon over here. Okay, we've got Pagnus's gray. I like Pagnus. I don't know who Pagnus is, but you know, they have a gray, so there's that. I'm gonna take this Pagnus gray, right? I'm sure poor Pagnus is probably some poor fella who ended up with way too much of a name for himself. And I'm looking, I mean, I already have a sphere here, which I'm looking at, which kind of makes for an interesting idea. Let's see what we got. Sadly, the ice that forms in rings is not organized. It's not organized ice, so that makes it kind of difficult. Now, I have to do this in an arc, so I'm going to be doing it like this. Organized ice is what we get when ice is not disturbed in any way or ever bothered. Now, I think it's going to get a little bit of a bounce from the planet here. So ice, when it's organized, if you leave ice very alone and give it time to just sit and solidify, it does a great job of being transparent. But what's happening in these rings is brutal all the time. The ice in this area is getting bombarded all the time, right? And so there is no way that the ice on this planet is going to be, reasonable. It'll never get organized. So the ice in the rings can't get organized up. So it becomes a snowball. Just effectively a snowball. Snowballs are exactly what you'd have in space because snowballs are loosely shaped ice crystals that ended up kind of clumping together into a ball. So sadly, even though we would love to have it be prisms out there, it's really just a bunch of snowballs. Now I'm going to go on ahead and mix a small amount of my violet in here, and I'm actually going to mix it with this gray so that they're all mixed together into kind of a purplish gray, and that's going to give us a little bit of this effect right here. I'll just do that right there. However, Donald, that said, I want to say I really like your idea of beauty on that one. So, my ship is upside down. Yes, my ship is definitely upside down. Yep, I totally loved Titan AE, by the way. Titan AE is a classically awesome movie. Alrighty. Now that I'm gonna wait for this to dry before I continue on with this. Okay, so we're gonna give this a little bit of time. So that it can dry out through here. And while it's drying, I'm going to work on this planet. Now this planet is going to be sweeping with all kinds of, like, it's a Saturn or a gas giant, right? And we've done all kinds of other colors here. So what I really want to do is come in here and work on this with reds and oranges to kind of offset this, First things first, let's clear our palette in here. Before these paints settle in, we'll clear this palette up. Especially since you guys are watching this palette, so I'm really not going to keep using this side over here. That seems kind of ridiculous, so we'll just clear the palette on this side so you guys can see what I'm doing. Right? There. A lot going on. You guys are talking today. So, friends, you weren't here when we first talked. So, I'm sorry about that. To answer your question, the majority of these watercolors came from a set that my father gave me when I was in my late 20s. He was we have had sort of a moment with my dad and I. You know, my dad really wanted to be a doctor, and he never quite pulled that off, and dropped out of school. Well, he didn't drop out of school. He never made it past his bachelor's degree, and because of that, he's always kind of felt like, gee willikers, I wish I could have done better. And so when I was growing up, I obviously was an artist, and he knew artists don't make any money. We don't earn a lot. We're never going to be, I mean, that's just not the way this culture works. And so he didn't mean to say that he really was trying to say, it's great to be an artist, but please be a doctor too, or a lawyer, or something that makes money so that you can be an artist at night. And that's fine. And I've tried to do that over the years. I became a computer guy and spent time doing database work and things like that. But I've never managed to pull out a career path. And even when I did find one that fit me really well, it was teacher, which doesn't get paid well. So, somewhere along the line, I think my dad sort of felt bad for that, and so he's really tried to work with me on, you're an artist, let's make this work. And at one point in time, he went down to Texas Art Supply, which is a big art store in Houston, and he bought me this beautiful set. It's made of wood, and it has, pull-out arms and palettes and all kinds of stuff. But the paints in there were not top quality. But that's what I started with. But not wanting to, I'll put this over here, and I'll put my water, before I spill it all over the place, over here. Not wanting to waste those, I've used them. And what I was kind of just saying that earlier was, it's not about the paints. It's about it's about the skill. All you're going to get with cheaper paints is just that they crack. See how these have cracked in here? And they don't lay down as stable. Like, you can see some of it peeled off here and some of it peeled off there, and stuff like that. I mean, it's just not as stable. But that's okay. I mean, these are still 20-year-old paints, and they still work just fine. So everything up to about here, this violet right here, no, not there, because that's sepias also. So it's actually, I think, this ivory black. So this first row to the ivory black, with the exception of the fellow, all of that are the paints that my dad gave me a long time ago. And I'm still very grateful to him for that, because I didn't know where I wanted to be back then. And the set that he gave me had gouaches, and it had oils, and it had watercolors, and it had pencils, and it had markers. And so it was kind of like a, where do you want to go sort of set. It was like, figure it all out. Play with this and figure it out. And I found out pretty quickly I hated oils. I really hate oils. Because it gets on your hands, and it gets on everything. It gets on your clothes. You can't do oils cleanly, and it can't come out of your clothes, and it doesn't come off your hands, and I hate oils. But what I did find was, I liked watercolor. I like the look of watercolor, and I like the feel of watercolor. So, though this is sort of a cheaper set of paints up here on this top row, it worked really well. So there's a story of my dad. We're going to make sure that this little planet, the little moon up there, is dry, because we're going to work here for a little bit. Put my water back up there. That's my clean water. And we're going to take my paintbrush here, and oh man. Okay, we'll see you tomorrow, Donald. Have fun. good space pet can keep that jelly from spilling. That's all. Brent, I saw that meme too. I loved it. With the Klingons and the Klingon toast. That that was beautiful. Okay. I have a cadmium red. Okay, that's a base red. And so I know I need a small screen above my desk or something so I can read what you guys are saying. I don't actually know how to solve all of I kind of count myself as pretty proud here that I've managed to get most of this figured out. But one of the other things I need is I need to move the microphone to right here, so I've got two microphones because I've got two spots for it over there on the board. But I need a cable that will go down the arm, come around the back here, and then up, and then back around, and then go into the port over there. That's not 5 feet. So I think that's all the audio cable I've got right now is a 5 foot. I think that's 15 or 20. And I need to kind of roll around. It's a long haul. So I'll figure it out. Anyway, I'm going to take this cadmium red and put some water on my palette. Take this red, put it in there. Right? And I'm going to do turbulent clouds in this. Just like the other one. Just like here, except in a different way. So I'm going to go ahead and wet on dry this. I do this. And I like the wet on dry effect, so we're going to kind of just keep going with it. Right? I'm going to do bands. Right? Planet has bands. And give it a little bit of a bow here, just to make it feel like we're getting sort of stripes kind of going along the side of this planet, right? I'm going to make sure that I keep a line to the edge. And we don't want it to look like stripes because, of course, Jupiter doesn't look like stripes. So we're going to make some of these thicker, some of these thinner. Like that one here, we're just going to make really thin like this. Do that, a little bit of wiggle out of it, give it some interest going on here. We're way close on this planet here, right? So unlike, we're going to make sure that we're going to have some variation here. We're going to come back in with some orange and some other colors here in a second too, so that'll help. The other thing that's not over here, Brent, is I don't have a clock. So I'm like, I hope to goodness that I know what time it is. Because you see, now it's already 11. So I've got to kind of like, I watch to see if something pops up over here. And that's kind of a thing. All right. I already got some red coming in now. I'm going to clean off the brush. Make sure it's really clean. Because we're going to now do the same thing over here. We're going to bring in some orange. So I've got this yellow ochre right here, which I really like yellow ochre. It's like an ochre, except with an oak. It's an ochre. Right? Give this some good water kind of going in here. And we're just going to go back through and kind of do this number, right? And we're laying down sort of a trend in here. Once this is dried, I'm going to come back in with something else and do stuff with it. But for right now, it makes for good television, so to speak, by just doing this number, and this gives us a manner of what's going on. Now the problem, of course, we've got is, no matter what, this table's at an angle. So all the paint is pooling at the wrong side down here, which is going to make for an interesting effect when this all dries out, because all this is going to be dark. down here, right? So I'm going back in and I'm just picking up the paint from down there when it pools and telling it, no, you can't do that. Don't pool. Okay. We're going to do this. And all we're doing here is just adding in yellow to offset this planet's sort of turbulent atmosphere, right? We got this great turbulent atmosphere kind of going on here. It's kind of neat looking, so we're going to do that. We're going to end up doing ultimately the same thing we did with the clouds over here in the planet, and we're just going to kind of tab that in a second, but we're going to have to come up here and do some work up there first. So the next thing I'm going to try to do, I'm going to take some of my actual true orange, and I'm not going to dilute this much because I want this orange to really stand out. So I'm going to do that all on there. You can see that it's already making a mess of everything. Perfect. Right, this is going to make for really good planetary nasties, whatever is going on in this atmosphere. Like that. Right, all of this great stuff that's going on in this atmosphere. There's turbulence in the atmosphere. Right. This also gives some depth to the yellow. It's coming in here, and I'm really just bringing this in, bring in the orange, right? And bring that orange in. There we go. And bringing it in, it goes from lighter to darker. So we're going to get a lot more out of it. A Raspberry Pi, huh? With a monitor? Yeah, that's really what would be. Yeah, I could run a little clock and a Raspberry Pi. And about the news on Venus, right? Oh my God, we've got life on Venus. No, we don't. We just have the potential for life on Venus. But that's okay. I like to be excited about the concept that it might be life, right? I mean, that's what's important. Now, the pigments that we have for these are very rich. For these other kind of up here pigments, so they're very, very, very rich. But this is made for some great effect right through here. I mean, this has worked really well, right? So that's going to be what I'm going to want to do is come in with some more red, but this time use my crimson. And I'm going to do the same thing we just did right here. I'm just going to take and touch right along here, right? And this is just adding variation to this. We're just changing its color up, that's all. Right? And we're just kind of going in here and just changing up the color. And that's all we're doing, just adding some color and some depth in there. Yeah, the fact that they found anything on Venus is way awesome in my book. I think that's wonderful. Now the good news is this is a planet with a dark side, and the dark side's probably right over here. So the truth of the matter is I'm actually kind of hoping that we get a little bit of pooling on this side because it'll add some darkness to this side of the planet. Kind of need that. But I am going to go on ahead and up here on the top, like the polar cap. Go ahead and do that. just like that. And that gives us sort of a distinction of gas giants. It makes us feel more like this is a gas giant and less like this is some weird planet that has vegetation in rings or something, because we key in instinctually. It's funny how humans pattern, and we pattern very well and very quickly, but we've already keyed in that if it's white on the top and the bottom, it's a rocky core planet. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's true, but that's the indication that we see, right? All right. I'm feeling pretty good about this. Let's go back over here and talk a little bit more about our little moon, right? We got this little moon up here. What are we going to do with that moon, right? I'm going to go ahead and take some of my ivory black. This is a very dark color, so you got to be careful with it, right? I'm going to dilute it a lot. And I'm going to take this ivory black. I'm going to dilute it and dilute it some more. And we're just going to come in here and just tap in here. We've got kind of this dark zone that I have created already previously, right? And these are going to be the mares of this particular planetoid, this moon. It has these mares, like exactly like you'd imagine from various things, and then I'm going to tap like that, and what it's doing is it's causing splatters, right? You gotta be careful. I don't want it to splatter over here on the ship, but any little splatters over here turn out looking like moon stuff. Looks like moons, right? Hand dot, but if you hand dot, it won't turn out half as good as if we splatter, right? There's usually, and I don't know why I do. I guess I do this because I torture myself. Traditionally, we mask. We'll put a mask around there, but every time I put masks on things, I end up tearing up the paper when I pull the mask off. So it's kind of a thing. That, it's kind of a thing that happens. So now we're going to wait until this dries. And when it does, we're going to end up with quite a bit of an interesting effect going out here, right? Now the trick to this that will work and be awesome is this guy right here. This is a white marker pen. Okay? So the white marker pen, it's an actual white paint pen, right? It paints in white, just like it looks here. And I make sure that it's got a little pump on the back that allows me to put the paint out. Because right now it's sticky. The paint hasn't been used in a while. And so my white paint pen has some issues going on for it. So there's this cap on the back, and this is a flush. And we flush the pen. What we're doing right there is flushing the pen. So we just flushed the pen. It has a flush on the back. And now we just have the ability to add white dots. Right? And this is how you add stars. Over here. Stars are much more dramatic when they're inside this nebula area. There we go. Now, sometimes you kind of have to reset the point, right? Because the point gets kind of weird. The brush on this has a definitive idea of where it wants to be. Right? And the best part is some of the splatters that I put out here on this moon work really well in light of that. Right? There we go. So that's a white paint pen, which I keep with me all the time, right? So, right, splatter is random, dot is not. I wish that I could find a good way to splatter with that, but it doesn't work as well as I'd like it to, right? So, that's all right. We do the best that we can with what we've got. So, the next question really boils down to, if we're done with this guy, which one works better, blue or red, on this one? So that's going to be a thing. The red stands out more, so I think I'm going to go for red. But this is my stamp, which I have purchased for this job. Right? I just place it right here. Right? There we go. Just like that. You can't actually see the signature because of my own picture. There's the signature right there. There we go. This is not, in fact, the world's best. That's all right. We will get better as time progresses. I promise you. This is how we get better. We get better doing this all the time. All the time. We get better. We get better every pass. And so, this is attempt 1. We'll get there. I think it's interesting because now I'm looking at this picture and the gold spilled out into here because I didn't wait. A lot of this is you should have waited, you know. You can kind of see right there whenever I do this, you can see that the gold splattered up into the top part of this dome up here into here. And that's okay. It's okay. And like the same thing happened here. Got a little bit of it that went down into the bottom. So it's not perfect. It's not perfect. But what is, right? What's perfect? What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. No more. And then, sudden had away. Who knew? Alright, so, put that there. We always want to make sure that we clean the palettes between passes on this. So, we're going ahead and grab a little bit of water and clean our palette. Doesn't like that. Cleanup is almost as important in watercolor as prep. Make sure you've got yourself a decent workspace for next time. So, this experiment, which is another one of those let's try an experiment here moments, this experiment actually I feel like worked really well. We did a pretty decent finish work on this, which looks kind of cool, makes it look neat. I actually kind of like the moon and the planet as things have come up, and it looks nice. And even the sprinkled dots that I did before that made me kind of abandon this piece, they don't look so bad, right? I mean, splattering the painting with red didn't turn out to be so horrible after all. So, there is that. Bring this back over. You know what? I like it too. It didn't turn out bad. It didn't turn out horrible. It actually kind of looks pretty decent. I'm pretty happy with it. But it also looks a whole lot better on my low resolution camera than it does in real life. Which, that's alright. That's okay too. So, the things that I didn't talk about, whoa, I just totally blew out the monitor there. Okay, sorry about that, guys. So, let's talk a little bit about a couple of other things I didn't bring up in this. I use cold press paper. There's warm press and there's cold press paper. And the difference really is in the tooth, which is the grit, if you will, of the paper. Cold press paper is smoother and doesn't have a lot of grit than warm press paper. Or is it the other way around? It might be the other way around. I think I look better on a low resolution camera as well. Anyway, so actually I think it's the other way around because I seem to remember I don't like smooth paper. So warm press is smoother and has a much more solid, smooth surface. It's more like your normal piece of paper with the sort of that normal smoothness. Cold press is toothier. It's got a lot more grit to it. And since I actually like the randomness of the ink spreading out, the paint kind of going out into random directions, I think that looks great, especially when I'm doing things like clouds, as I did a lot of on this particular piece. I feel like cold press works better for me, and this is a matter of personal taste. The difference between warm press and cold press is so up to you. So I get cold press paper almost all the time because I like the toothiness of it. So that's kind of the way that goes. So you never know. Everything's kind of got a different thing going to it. We all have different ideals. So it's kind of cool. So that's the other things. Obviously, the nifty thing was using my stamp today for the first time ever on my artwork. I think that's really cool. I'm going to have to put in a date, but at least I put in my stamp, which makes me happy. Love my stamp. Actually, what I should do is go back over there right now and put in the date before we lose track of what we're doing here. So let's do that. Let's go over there and put a date on it. So, when I put dates on these things, I started this tradition when I was in Japan, and what we've got here is, this is Reiwa 02. So that's what that R means. I started when I was in Japan, I landed in Japan in Heisei era 18. And so that was the year. And when I was signing my artwork over there, I was kind of like, oh yeah, I'll just write H18 and that'll tell me what year it was because it was Heisei 18, and it's unique. It's not the same. It still dates it so that you can figure out when it was made, and I can figure out when I drew this picture. But it's not limited to, or it's unique and different. So I've been kind of since then dating my stuff as we went through Heisei era. And last year, the Emperor of Japan abdicated, starting a whole new era in Japan called Reiwa. So now everything has to be R01, and now we're in R02, which is the second year of Reiwa. And it's a thing. I don't know. I was very influenced by being in Japan, but not just influenced in the ways of, liking their comic books or something like that, which is what started me getting interested in Japan. But instead, I actually kind of like following some of their other cultural stuff. So there's that. So it's kind of a thing. So we've got Reiwa 02. So it's R02. And that's where I date stuff. Sometimes I like to put the month. And if so, I'll traditionally date it. Because really, honestly, wherever we are now, we're in September of the year, and in Japanese, that's just really 9th month. So it doesn't help any. You just put 9 month in the month symbol. So there's that. So we're going to now we've got about 30 minutes left in the show. So let's open a recent piece. Wow. I have a lot of things suddenly here. What happened? Why is this all the stuff that we have here? I don't get this. Huh. Okay, well, I don't understand what's going on with this, so I'm just going to nod and pretend like I understand. And isn't that weird, though? There's only 3.5 months left in 2020. Although, really, honestly, I think there's been 4 or 5 years since January. So, there's always that. It depends on how you look at things. It's nice because I'm kind of busy. So that helps a whole lot. Being busy is useful. And that does make things, better. Time's sort of flying a little bit more. Okay, we're going to take a look at where we are with our dear friend. Okay, so I am kind of curious about this particular one. It's this piece here. Page 5 of Fred's game book. This is a tough piece because there's a lot of key pieces that need to be in there and parts that need to be put in, and it's a mess. So I want to take a look at this. Kind of get an idea of what I'm doing here. This is a mess. Okay, so let's go on ahead and share out that screen. I've already done the pre-work here on trying to kind of get an idea of what I want my pose to look like. So I'm going to take a look at this here. I'm going to blue. Go out onto the blue line. We'll get our pencil, because we always need our pencil. And we've got a lot of stuff going on here. So I'm probably just going to directly trace Denver in the background here. But this front part, I kind of want to talk a little bit about the creatures that are out here. Right, we got this frog thing, which will probably be a ridden animal of some sort. A really need a smaller brush. Really need a smaller brush on that too. That's not going to be any fun when I try to erase that. We got like a frog thing here. So I'm going to... Wow, I made too small of a brush. There we go. We have this frog guy. And he's right here, and he's going to be like a giant frog. And they use him to ride, right? So we're going to kind of have him looking out over like this. They're going to have a saddle on him. Right. There we go. So this is just this frog sitting up here with, he's just waiting to kind of rivet into town. Alright. Okay, we're going to have, I'm just going to leave the container as it is. And this guy is looking out over the town. Give him sort of this. And then let's look at his action line here. Kind of head down like this. We don't know what he's actually looking at right here, but he's probably looking at something. Give him his, like, some kind of vest of some sort. We're just going to do that. Yeah, he's checking his cell phone. That's what he's doing. What's he doing? He's checking his cell phone. Does he have reception here or not? And give him some kind of weapon of some sort. And when he looks out over here, I've got sort of a different view going for this guy on the side here. I don't know, he'd have his, he just kind of, and maybe he's got some kind of ear thing going for him. Right? So that's him. I'm pretty okay with that. And then, I don't know. I'm looking at her and I'm thinking, well, I mean, do I actually want to just match this pose? What I've got is this great bug behind there, here, which I think is funny. See you tomorrow, Brent. Have a good day, my friend. I'm actually probably going to just give up on this. I don't feel it today. I'm not feeling really, I don't know. This doesn't feel like, I'm not into this mode yet. I haven't quite gotten started on this one. So maybe what I'll do is put in a new layer up above here, and then just going ahead and trace in the car and stuff like that, because I know we're going to need that, right? I mean, we're going to need this bug, and I don't want to mess with perspective on the bug. Yeah, I'm not feeling the mood here, you know what I mean? And it's like, ugh. I'm actually kind of hungry. Which is kind of aggravating. It's always kind of a bummer when you're hungry. Right? So we're just gonna and this, I know it's tracing, but so much time saved here. It's unbelievable how much time is saved by tracing on this one. Could I have drawn this straight up? Oh yeah, absolutely. Totally could have. But it adds another hour and a half to this drawing. I don't want to do that. I mean, this is already going to be 5 or 6 hours into this drawing. And I know that a lot of people really feel that it's not appropriate to trace. And the reality is, you need to have the skill. You need to be able to do this without tracing. But if you can, then this just saves time. And it's not anybody else's work. This is a render out of Daz Studio. And I think the biggest problem with tracing always has been somebody is stealing somebody else's work. And that's not what we're doing here. We're not stealing any work at all. And I know that that's sort of the key piece. You don't want to steal anybody else's work. One can argue that somebody made these models. That's an absolutely valid argument. You know, these are Daz Studio models that were done by somebody. Somebody did them. However, that I'm not even going to say that they don't deserve. They absolutely deserve to be recognized for it. But one can also argue a lot of different pieces of this, and I don't know. Right? All of this would be impossible. I'd have reference photos and things like that. Put the lug nuts in. There's always a Volkswagen bug. It doesn't matter what it is. Always a Volkswagen bug. That's how you know that we are in the future. In the post-apocalyptic future, no less. Because once there's a bug, then it's post-apocalyptic. Because VW bugs, just like insects of lore, survive anything. Just putting crates down. There we go. We're just doing these crates. It works. I'm not going to make these cool sci-fi widgets. We're going to just take the basic shape of these Now we're going to figure out something else to do with them. These are just some kind of canisters at the moment, but we'll figure out something for them. There we go. Couple of long crates here. We'll have to do the door. There we go, just like this. There, so we're just putting in lines, and this is a lot of what we were practicing before, right? If we think this is cheating, wait until you see what I'm going to do with the comic. I've been building 3D models of all the ships so that when the time comes that we need to use those ships, they just render. I don't even need to do this tracing part. Great. Now, the truth is with those, I did model it. I built it in 3D Studio, or in this case Blender. Back in the day, some of the earlier stuff was done in 3DS. Right? I know that we've got her arm in here somewhere. There we go. We'll go in here. There, just like this. What's probably going to happen is I'm probably going to define all of this as black so that it's not going to be we're not going to see a whole lot on the interior. Makes some sense. You wouldn't see a lot on the interior anyway, right? We got some young girl up here, and we got an older girl here, and an older guy over there. There we go. Just like that. I'm still going to get this project done, even though I'm still kind of in total paint mode. Right? I like this control panel, so I'll keep it. It's kind of cool. Control panel. There we go. But I'm not going to put the same things on there. And up here, and this already does the off into the distance foreshortening for me. Ooh, but I screwed it up. When you do something like a cityscape, right? This is my hometown. This is the metropolis near my hometown. So I usually get pretty picky about how it looks. If it's specifically called for Denver. The artwork is specifically calling for Denver. Right? And so I always get kind of mad artists who don't actually understand how the city looks, and they draw the city, but like as a Denverite, it's important. It's very important that I get the details right, because boy, it's embarrassing to have to say, ooh, yeah, I drew that. Well, you didn't write all the buildings right. So what I'm going to do is literally trace this. It makes it so much easier for me to deal with that than it would for me to just to have drawn this by hand. Right? It'll already have the angle correct. Everything will be correct. I don't have to fight with it. In production art, the last thing you want to do is make your job harder. You really don't want to make your job any harder than it has to be. It's already pretty hard doing all this, so that's a difficult thing. Of course, as we have learned from various incidents like 9/11 and things like that, the skyline could change at any moment, thus rendering this entire picture moot. Right? Now we've started to get that in there. I'll figure out what to do about the people later. But at least the hard stuff, the boxes and the crates and things like that, which is going to be all difficult, those can be just done with a basic trace. We'll go in and work on the city a little later. Alright. I like the way this is looking so far, but I'm kind of running out of steam on work for the day, and that happens. Sometimes you just have a hard time getting started, and that's totally okay. We all do. We all have days that are good and days that are bad. So, today is not necessarily one of my better art days per se, although I'm having a good day otherwise. I hope you are too. So, we're going to head out of here in a second, and I'm going to get going. Before we go, we were talking a little bit about some of the tools that we use for various things. We did some practice and stuff like that. So before we go, brush. A brush is useful. I can't really use the brush on my screen though. Kind of a bummer. So some of the tools that we do, kind of want to, I didn't do this today and I should have cleaned my monitor because of course I've been drawing on this all morning and it's of course covered in dust. It's been sitting all weekend. I was playing No Man's Sky, which is one of my very, very favorite games. I was playing it with my kid, and we were both on the same planet. We found a good planet, which has double rings, but it also has very low sentinel activity, and the weather is perfect. Never storms. Right? This is my paintbrush. Never storms on this planet. Has a ring, and the weather is temperate, and the animals are really, really mild. There's no, aggressive animals. The only thing that's on there that'll hurt you are the plants. But the plants don't move, so as long as you stay away from it, you're fine. So we've called the planet Earth Ring, which I think is cool. And we're kind of working on this planet. I put my base originally on a mountaintop, and then we ran out of room because it's a mountaintop. So I have leveled it now. It's a mesa, and we've all built around it. And when we did, it was really cool. We started cutting into the mountain, and we found a cave under the mountain, which is also cool. This is part of the reason why I get aggravated about paints, because that's that white pen. Right? That is a big paintbrush. Big paintbrush. It's for painting walls, says Chelsea. Anyway, so No Man's Sky, we've managed to level off the top of this mountain. Now we have this huge mesa with landing pads on one side, and on the other side we've got just like this really cool vista. And we can watch sunrises on one side and sunsets on the other. And my son has built his building on the sunrise side, and I built my building on the sunset side. And we've got cool lit up sidewalks that now go all over the place and even cross over the cave. It's not OSHA compatible, so you have to kind of worry about the bridge going over the cave because it doesn't have railings. So you could just totally walk off the bridge and fall into the cave, which, wouldn't end well, I guess. I don't know. So it really is cool. You haven't seen a brush like that since the Marines. Yeah. Except that, if they're going to make you clean the bathrooms, you get a toothbrush. Anyway. And it's really cool. The planet's pretty, and it's got nice clouds and this ring that goes right up through the middle of the sky, and you can see the other little planets in the system in the sky as well. They're kind of faded out, but they're cool. So I'll take some screenshots, and maybe what we'll do is we'll talk about that a little on Geek Tank at some point here, because that'd be cool. I think that'd be awesome. That's what we should do, Chels. We should do our screenshots from our favorite games and just things. I don't know. It'd be kind of fun. And, I promise not to bring any EA games to the table. Anyway. So, it's because we love you, Chelsea. We love you. You know that, right? Okay, just making sure. Show and tell, right? Show and tell. You know how to take screenshots in your games. I think I can figure out how to take screenshots in mine. I have more faith that you know what you're doing than I do, but that's okay. That's actually not, in fact, the first time that we have ever done that where I'm like, Chelsea knows what she's doing, but the rest of us, yeah, clueless. That's us. Clueless. So yeah, there we go. That's my. I think I'm running out of things to say. I've been having a lot of fun with. My sister was here last week, and that was cool. And we had a lot of fun wandering around like our old neighborhoods. This is where we used to live, and stuff like that. We walked around the little lake that we grew up at, and it's a cute little lake that's right up here, and we were just up there, and we walked around that. That was fun. We'll figure it out. She's like, I think so. I think I know how to take screenshots. The problem I've got is I rigged my TV into my board so that I can broadcast to my little television, which is up here on the shelf. And that means that when I take a screenshot, it's 4 screens wide, because it's these 2 screens, my drawing monitor, and then the TV. So now every time I take a screenshot, it's this long strip every time. It's very funny. So unless I take a direct screenshot in No Man's Sky, which actually can happen, I just not sure. So, but yeah, I think that'd be fun. I think we should. It's like all these monitors. Although, to be fair, I'll have to show you guys a picture of this layout from here looking this way. To be fair, when all the monitors are on doing things, it totally looks like some cyberpunk thing. Especially with all the little tubes that go to all the lights right here, so all these lights work. Yeah, this is very cyberpunk going this direction. And my computer has lights around the fan that circle. And so you've got these circle lights here, my keyboard's all lit up, all these lights right here, and then 4 monitors. It just totally looks like some kind of cyberpunk thing. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's a thing of beauty. And why, thank you, Chelsea. I appreciate that. I do like this setup. I've got the lights back here you can see, and I've got all the different colors so that they all look different. And all my starships are up here now and stuff. If I could just clean this little section over here up, you've got like some Christmas lights there that look really cool, and yeah, I'm very pleased with those guys. And I'm actually going to probably put those Christmas lights under this awning right here so that they shine down. And so that'll be cool. They're right now just a bunch, but I think I could probably just get in there with like some kind of mini stapler sort of thing and just line them together and staple in on either side of the wires, and then just loop them back and forth so that they just go back and forth, and that whole area would be lit up. I think that'd be cool. I might do the same with the its twin over here. I've got 2 sets of those lights. So then you'd have multicolored lights just kind of raining down light in that area back there, which is a charging area. That area is right there is a charging area for all of my various things, like my iPad's over there right now. I have an iPad. It isn't hooked up to anything, but I have an iPad. I have no earthly idea how to draw on it. I haven't figured that out. But that's its job, is to be figured out how to be drawed on. That's its job. Drawed. It's a word. Just saying. Tell your friends. So, that's where we are. I'm glad you joined me for my painting. Oh, hey, Chelsea, check out the painting. I did this painting today. This is the painting we did today. Right? So, I did this in watercolors, and that's what I did. It's a painting with watercolors. Oh, that's right. Emily does iPad work too. That's not a bad idea. So, I say that because I actually used my stamps on it today. Stamped it. Brent was here for that. So, anyway. Yeah, I need to talk to Emily about lots of things. Like, we need to do a Guy and Emily art show someday. That'd be fun. And talk about all these things. I loves watercolor too. It's so nice, and like I can already see, like I've got my white pen bled on me, and it's a paint, and ugh, it's such a pain. So we'll get there. I like it. I'll scan this in at some point in time so that you guys can all see what it looks like scanned in, because it looks beautiful because the camera over there is really low resolution. It's not as good whenever you look at it up close, but that's okay. Like I said, we've all got to start somewhere and do something somehow and get started in a position like that. So, okay, guys, I think we're good. I think this is pretty much the end of my show. I'm rambling now, and I'm hungry, and you're probably hungry too. So you guys should go eat. I'll go eat, and then everybody can be well fed, and then I will see you tomorrow for even more art, because I am never stopping. This is eternal. This just keeps going, and it should always keep going. That's our jobs on this planet, to be storytellers. So there you go, guys. Hope you have a great Monday, and keep your eyes on the stars. See you later.